Published 1911 EDT, the 8th of October 2017. Updated 2102 EDT, the 8th of October 2017. Not finishing the greens really is down to a child's genes and has nothing to do with the parents, according to new research. Two picky eating mutations have been identified for the first time, one that puts youngsters off trying new food and the other that turns them into teatime tearways. The breakthrough could open the door to new ways of tackling the childhood obesity epidemic, according to researchers. British scientists suggested last year that toddlers' fussy eating habits are linked to genetics rather than being badly brought up. Now a US team has found DNA variants believed to be related to the perception of bitter taste among 2 to 4-year-olds. New research has uncovered 2 gene mutations that could be the cause of fussy eating among children. File image used. One known as TAS2R3H was associated with limited dietary variety and the other called CA6 with being out of control during mealtimes. Food fussiness, the tendency to be highly selective about the textures, taste and smell of foods a child is willing to eat, is often seen as a consequence of inadequate parenting. But evidence is increasing that it's a matter of nature and not nurture, with parents being largely blameless. Nutritional scientist Natasha Cole said it's not surprising children who are genetically bittersensitive may be more likely to turn down Brussels sprouts or broccoli, for instance. Doctoral student Ms. Cole, a member of an obesity prevention program at Illinois University, hopes it can help identify the determinants of picky eating in early childhood. She said for most children picky eating is a normal part of development. But for some children the behavior is more worrisome. The genes control the chemosensory organs found in the tactile receptor systems, but it was not known if they were linked to children's picky eating habits. Ms. Cole said for most preschoolage children fussy eating is just a normal part of growing up. But for others, insisting on only eating chicken nuggets at every meal, for instance, or refusing to try something new, can lead to being over or underweight, illness or eating disorders later in life. So information about breastfeeding and picky eating history was collected on 153 preschoolers from parents with DNA extracted from saliva samples. One gene mutation known as TAS2R3H was associated with limited dietary variety and the other called CA6 with being out of control during mealtimes. File image used. Ms. Cole and colleagues pinpointed the variants after selecting 5 particular genes related to the perception of taste. They said other chemosensory factors such as odor, color and texture may also affect eating behaviors as well. Further studies are needed to see how children's preferences are influenced by the look or smell of food. Ms. Cole is also interested in understanding how picky eating starts even in under 2s. Most research has focused on those older than this. She said by 2 years children know how to eat and have pretty set habits. There is a huge gap in the research when children transition from a milk-based diet to foods that the rest of the family eats. She said more than a fifth, 22% of under 2s perceived as picky eaters by the parents. Surprisingly, she also found each additional month of the child's age was associated with an increase in food fussiness. Ms. Cole said so a child could go from rarely being a picky eater to being a frequent picky eater in less than a year, leading up to the gene study published in the Journal of Nutrigenetics. In Nutrigenomics, her team identified common characteristics of picky 2 to 4-year-olds and divided them into distinct groups. Further research looked at how parenting styles may affect the behavior and if children exhibit it both at home and in child care. Food scientist Professor Suyun Lee said this has kind of been an evolution of the research, seeing an interaction rather than just seeing the child as on its own, which, when we first started trying to define a picky eater, we were just looking at the child. As we were moving into different parts of the research, we realized it's not just the child, it's the caregiver and the environment as well. Natasha is actually taking a deeper look at the child and genetic predisposition. She is looking at sensory taste genes and also at some of the behavioral genes that have been highlighted in the literature. She has been looking at the whole field of picky eating research and classifying it based on nature versus nurture. Nature is the genetic disposition and nurture is the environment and the caregivers. She said the idea is based on an orchidantlion hypothesis. Professor Lee explained there are some genes, the behavioral genes, that make the child more prone and more sensitive to being more behaviorally problematic when external influences are present that may not work out the way That's the awkward concept. This may be a sensitive child who may not be as resilient with negative feedback or negative mealtime strategies given by parents versus a dandelion child who is very robust and resistant to whatever nurture or not is given to them. There is that fine line, and it's not just the nurture, the environment, that's influencing that, but it's the child's susceptibility to the environmental cues as well. A year ago, University College London researchers examined the eating habits of more than 1,900 pairs of twins and found they were more influenced by genes than upbringing.